The film begins with the narration of an old woman telling how they ended up in the town they called Paradise. She explains that everyone went in search of gold, but what they found was something much worse. Now, something is approaching the place. A wolf's roar echoes through the area, alerting all the residents, who immediately arm themselves and prepare for a possible attack. One of the wolves observes a house nearby, and inside it, the family realizes that something strange is happening. They decide to check it out and end up finding their son brutally murdered. Sometime later, we meet a young man named Kyle, who is late for a trip with his classmates. His friend calls to ask where he is, and Kyle lies, saying he is on his way, but is surprised when Ben enters through the bedroom door. Ben questions why Kyle invited him on this trip, which he considers stupid, and Kyle asks if he forgot the plan. He explains that the destination is an abandoned town up north called Paradise, and that the expedition is part of the research project of the girl he is in love with, a young woman named Jess. Kyle sees this journey as the perfect opportunity to finally get closer to her. Ben asks why he has to go along, and Kyle reveals that he lied to Jess that they were going to search for gold. Since Ben knows geology, they might even find something real there. Ben continues to be reluctant and says that Kyle has been trying to get Jess's attention for over 8 months with no success, and now he wants to drag him to a town surrounded by rumors of ghosts. Even begrudgingly, Ben agrees to go, and they set off. In the car, Ben keeps complaining that the plan will fail because they didn't even bring pickaxes. Kyle tries to calm him down, saying everything will be all right. They soon arrive at the meeting point of the group, and Kyle asks his friend to sit in the back when Jess arrives. But to his frustration, Jess shows up with her boyfriend named Rob and introduces him to the friends. Kyle's plan starts to fall apart. Ben still attempts to position himself in the back seat, but Rob takes the front, saying he wants to ride with his girlfriend. Rob asks how long it will take to reach the destination, and Kyle replies that it will be a few hours. Rob starts mumbling, and Jess quickly covers his mouth playfully. Then, the group sets off on their journey, and along the way, Ben begins asking Rob some questions. He asks if he's the guy from the football team, and Rob says he recently injured his knee and had to give up his career. Ben then asks what he does now, and Rob replies that he works in game development, thoroughly stunning Kyle. They arrive, and Rob asks where exactly they are going, and Jess explains that it's to an abandoned town called Paradise, which was sought after due to supposed gold fortunes in the area. Kyle adds that the town is now completely deserted. The group asks what Kyle's plan for the expedition is, and he talks about a mine that is 800 meters away. Rob and Jess head off ahead while Ben calls his friend an idiot, and Kyle questions why his friend is boosting Rob's morale. The two have a brief argument, and Ben says Kyle is just frustrated because Rob had the courage to do what he never did, and now he's trying to place the blame on his friend for his shyness. Ben soon runs to catch up with the couple, while Kyle lags behind, and we see that a wolf is already watching him. Jess and her boyfriend soon reach a point where the mine entrance is located, and Ben follows soon after, complaining about Kyle and calling his friend an idiot. The boy, seeing that the couple is in an intimate moment, decides to step away to relieve himself. Kyle is on his way and calls for his friend but cannot find him and ends up slipping down a slope. He hears some growls and shouts for Ben, but with no response, he laughs and starts walking again, but again feels like something is following him. He looks back, but sees nothing. Deciding to ignore it, he continues walking, but this time hears footsteps approaching, and when he turns around, he sees a giant wolf standing in front of him. Kyle takes a few steps back and ends up falling, injuring himself, and the wolf simply runs off while Kyle remains huddled on the ground. He decides to get up and starts running, and we see that the wolf is watching him from atop a rock. It howls to warn the rest of the pack as Kyle flees. Back to Jess and Rob, they are at the mine entrance, and Jess asks if it's safe to enter when Ben appears, saying there's only one way to find out. Ben decides to take the lead and asks if anyone else wants to join him, and Jess replies that he is the geology expert. He questions if anyone brought a flashlight, and Jess says they didn't bring any. Ben enters the mine and ends up bumping his head on something, causing him to fall, and Rob jokingly asks if they are rich yet. Meanwhile, Kyle continues fleeing from the wolves. He runs through dense woods and soon finds the rest of the group, warning that there are wolves in the area. Ben asks if he even knows the difference between a wolf and a coyote, and Kyle replies that he doesn't. Rob grabs Jess's arm and pulls away from the two, and Kyle asks where they are going. Rob says he wants to do something fun and not play minor. Jess disagrees and states that they took a long time to get there. Then, she suggests that Kyle take responsibility as the leader, and he agrees. Rob also concedes, and the group steps away from the mine entrance. Once again, the wolf watches them from a distance. The group walks through the forest, and everyone complains about how they have been walking for hours, while Kyle shows concern for the animal. Ben insists it was just a coyote, but Kyle keeps saying it was a wolf. Soon they arrive at the car, and the two friends continue arguing about the subject, not realizing that the wolf is silently stalking them. A few hours later, they arrive at the abandoned town and decide to investigate the place. Jess tells Kyle that the place is amazing. Rob asks what the history of the place is, and Kyle explains that some miners moved there, and a year later, the town was completely abandoned. Jess decides to delve deeper into the ruins, and since the atmosphere between Rob and Kyle isn't good, Rob decides to explore the town with his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Ben has yet another argument with Kyle, saying that everything is his fault and separates from the group once more. Kyle is alone again, but now aware of the dangers surrounding the area and decides not to stand still, starting to explore the town. He enters an abandoned bar without knowing that the wolf is watching him with fury. Ben is walking and simultaneously complaining about his friend until he hears a roar and thinks it's Kyle trying to play a prank on him. He looks back for a while and continues walking, cursing his friend, unaware that the wolf is already following closely behind him. He continues hearing noises and asks Kyle to stop playing around. While backing away a bit, Ben doesn't notice the animal getting closer and is soon brutally attacked. Back in the abandoned bar, the trio tries to find something, and Jess sticks her hand in a hole in the table to scare the two. The two play around intimately, which makes Kyle uncomfortable, and this time he puts his hand in to grab something stuck inside the table. Kyle soon pulls out an old book, and Jess begins to read the same story that was narrated at the beginning. But Rob soon arrives and interrupts the mood, saying that the book must have been left there to deceive fools. While Kyle looks out the window, he sees his friend crawling in all wounded and alerts the others. Ben can't hold it in and falls to the ground. Kyle immediately exits the bar to help his friend, and they all rush to him. Rob tries to lift him, causing Ben pain, and for a moment, everyone feels a little relieved. But when Jess looks at his neck, she sees a huge tear and is terrified. Rob says that the cell phones have no signal. He asks Kyle for help in carrying Ben's body, and they try to lift him, but Ben is too injured and weak. Rob asks him to push a little, and Ben, in great pain, manages to get up with the help of his friends. They soon reach the car, put Ben inside, and Kyle tries to start the vehicle, but the engine fails, and he discovers that the wires are gone. Rob asks Jess to get his phone, but she says her bag is also missing, and Rob confirms it's true. Rob asks if Kyle brought any first aid kit, and he replies that he brought nothing, leaving Jess angry with him. Rob decides that for now, it's best to go back to town, and soon they carry Ben back to the abandoned bar, with the wolf lurking once again. In the bar, they carefully lay Ben's weakened body on the floor, and Jess tries to communicate with him, but to no avail. Kyle suggests Jess hold his hand, and if he squeezes, it's because he can hear them, but can't respond. Soon, Ben moves his hand, and the two are happy. Later, we see that two more wolves are approaching while the group is still trapped in the bar. Rob suggests they should get out of that town as quickly as possible, and at the same time, Kyle, irritated, asks how they will do that without a phone and without a car. Jess agrees with Kyle, saying they don't know what is out there. Rob says that Ben may have tripped, and Kyle asks if he has an answer for what happened to the car. Rob calls Jess aside to talk and says their families won't miss them anytime soon and that they need to save themselves. Jess asks how they will do that. Rob suggests that someone go get help, then Jess agrees with the idea. Kyle then asks who will go, and Rob says he won't leave his girlfriend alone, suggesting that Kyle go. Jess says she will stay with the two of them, and soon Rob loses his courage, saying they don't know what is out there and that he doesn't want to go either. But Jess insists a lot until he agrees. They say goodbye with a kiss, and soon Rob runs out of the bar looking for help. When they are alone, Kyle apologizes to Jess, and she says that none of this is his fault, as he didn't know what would happen, and asks him to stay calm. Kyle grabs the book and questions whether that story is real, and Jess says she doesn't want to believe that's true. While Rob runs through the forest, Kyle reads the book to Jess. The book states that they found gold, But soon the attacks began, and in 4 months, 400 people turned into just 30. In a flashback, we see some men shooting at wolves, and Kyle reveals that they were all killed by the beasts. In the forest, Rob is already being chased by the wolves, but he doesn't sense their presence and keeps running. Kyle says he was right, and it was really a wolf. We see that Rob is attacked by 2 wolves, but somehow manages to escape and soon returns to the abandoned house, all injured. He arrives terrified, asking them to block the entrance, and Kyle informs them that it was the wolves that exterminated the settlers. Outside, we see that there are 2 beasts surrounding the place. Jess asks what they will do now, and Rob tries to grab a table but is too injured to do so and asks Kyle to do it. He also asks Kyle to lock the windows, and Jess helps him block the openings while the wolves continue circling the place. Kyle sits in a corner, begins to cry, and asks why they didn't believe him when he spoke about the wolf. Rob replies that it doesn't change anything now. Kyle is desperate, and Rob says that's good, but Kyle, irritated, asks how that can be good. Rob responds that now they know what they are dealing with. One of the wolves tries to enter through the window, scaring Kyle even more. The wolves cannot invade and continue circling the house. Rob says they need to get out before night falls because at night they will be lost. Kyle asks how they will fight against wolves, and Rob, furious, says they are just dogs and tells Kyle to stop being a coward. Jess tries to calm him and asks him to think of them as regular dogs. Kyle then shows a bite mark that nearly killed him when he was 12. While they argue, one wolf manages to enter through the roof and appears on the 2nd floor. He soon begins to descend the stairs and comes face to face with the group. The animal climbs onto the counter and walks slowly, observing the face of each one until it stops staring at Rob, who returns the look. Suddenly, the wolf lunges at Rob and begins the attack. Rob fights fiercely against the creature, manages to grab something, and brutally kills the wolf. Then he asserts to the group that they are just dogs and can be killed. At that moment, Ben wakes up and calls for Kyle. Jess and Kyle quickly approach Ben, who is in bad shape, and in his last words, he says none of this is the friend's fault. Rob insists they need to get out of there. He adds that if they stay, more wolves will appear, and then gives the group 2 options: run or wait for death. Kyle asks how they will escape carrying Ben's body, and Jess, in tears, says that Ben is already gone. Rob asserts that he is determined, and Kyle does not want to abandon his friend's body, but Rob replies that at that moment, there is no other choice. Kyle says there's a flashlight in the trunk of the car, and Rob says they will grab it on the way. They leave Ben's body in one of the rooms and give Kyle a few minutes to say goodbye. The trio soon begins to exit through the broken floorboards, and Rob says they will head to the car to grab the flashlight. While they crawl quietly, another wolf is already inside the house, sniffing Rob's blood. The trio starts running to the car, but soon the wolf pursues them, following the blood trail. They spot a house in the distance, and Rob says to hide in the barn. They reach the barn with the wolves on their tail, but manage to quickly shut the door and use a piece of wood to bar it. They then decide to go up to the 2nd floor, and Rob says they are safe for now, but someone needs to go to the car outside. Jess volunteers to go in Kyle's place, but he won't allow it, and says he will go. Kyle asks what the plan is, and Rob explains that he will run to draw the wolves away, while Kyle goes to the car to get the flashlight. The wolves are still trying to get in, and Rob reviews the plan with Kyle, who is quite nervous. Rob starts the plan by banging on the walls to attract attention, while Jess opens the barn door. The wolves quickly begin to chase him. Kyle is in shock, and Jess says that on the count of 3, she will open the door for him to grab the flashlight. Kyle runs to the car and manages to grab the bags, while in the barn, a wolf tries to enter through a gap. One of the wolves appears right in front of Kyle, and Jess sees the scene, left with no options but to go to her friend to try to help him. She sneaks carefully up to Kyle and asks him to come toward her slowly. He obeys and grabs her hand. Rob soon appears, and Kyle takes advantage of the wolf's distraction to throw one of the bags at it, giving the trio a chance to escape. They run to another abandoned house and spot more wolves on a porch, so they quickly enter a smaller cabin. Inside the cabin, Jess finds a box of dynamite, but her joy is short-lived as the wolves once again surround the place. Kyle asks Jess to spit in the backpack, saying the wolves are after her scent, and also asks Rob to smear his blood on it. Rob asks Kyle to crack open the door a bit so the wolves think they can enter, but instead, he throws the backpack out the window. Soon after, the trio rushes out through another door and arrives at a larger house, but when they turn around, they realize they have walked right into the wolves' den. Jess, who was bitten on the leg, feels a lot of pain. Kyle tries to comfort her, saying the injury is minor. Later, he bandages the girl's leg, and Rob asks if she will be able to run. She replies that she will try. Then Kyle shows that he brought the book with him and says there may be some information on how to defeat the wolves. He begins to tell the story of Paradise, saying that the former residents tried to hunt the wolves, but the book states that it would have been better to abandon the land than to face them, and that now the wolves won't stop until everyone is dead. Rob asks if this was the answer Kyle was looking for, and the boy says he is just trying to help, but Rob accuses him, saying that all of this is his fault. The two have a brief argument until Jess intervenes and asks them to collaborate to get her out of there. During the night, the wolves continue circling the place while Rob tries to go to the old cabin to get the dynamite. Kyle thanks Jess for saving him, and she thanks him for helping with her leg. Rob manages to reach the old cabin, grabs a stick of dynamite, and decides to return. Meanwhile, inside the house, Jess asks Kyle why he never asked her out. The young man replies that it was because she was with Rob, but she counters that before Rob, they spent an entire year together. Kyle confesses that he never managed it due to insecurity. He asks how she and Rob met, and she jokes that he asked her out. He jokes about her breaking up with Rob, but Jess comments that it wouldn't be right as they have only known each other for a month, but makes Kyle promise that if they survive, he will ask her out. Outside, Rob is trying to get back inside. He props an old ladder against the wall and climbs it. Jess and Kyle get startled, thinking it's a wolf, but they realize it's just Rob returning. During the day, Rob explains the plan to the trio. He points to a cabin near a lake and says he will take them there, then lure the wolves and blow them up. So they begin to exit through the window on the second floor of the house and head toward the old cabin by the lake. Inside the new shelter, Kyle asks them to just run away, but Rob replies that the road is very far and Jess wouldn't be able to traverse it in her current condition. Rob goes outside the cabin and says goodbye to the two, but soon Jess alerts him to look behind. Rob is now surrounded by several wolves, which begin to brutally attack him. Jess panics at seeing her boyfriend being killed and tries to run to help him, but Kyle stops her. In tears, Jess cries for the loss of her beloved, and Kyle says there is now nothing that can be done. The wolves try to invade the cabin while the others devour Rob's remains. Sometime later, Kyle peeks through the cracks in the wall and sees that the wolves have brought Ben's body and placed it next to Rob's. Jess asks Kyle what the wolves want with that, and he replies that this is how they want everything to end. Kyle says he will use Rob's plan and assures that they will get out of there alive. He exits through a hole at the back of the cabin and, very carefully, approaches his friends' bodies to grab the dynamite that is in Rob's pocket. Then Kyle runs to retrieve more explosives, luring the wolves inside a nearby house, ignites the dynamite, and quickly makes his way to the second floor. A massive explosion occurs, and Kyle manages to emerge alive, soon reuniting with Jess. The two decide to leave that cursed town. On their way, one last wolf appears in front of them, and Kyle immediately pulls out the dynamite. He stares at the animal and says that it is smart and just wants its town back. The wolf then slowly backs away, leaving the two sole survivors free to leave.